Hello everyone, welcome back to Planet Zoo and welcome back to Arcadia. In today's episode we're going to be doing a little bit of management. I'm going to talk through how we've developed off cam and where the whole kind of zoo's taken on its current journey and what it looks like at the moment. We're into like year 30 now and we've done quite a bit of development, starting with moving all of our exhibit animals into Old Town, and then Old Town has been fleshed out a little bit more. We're going to do like a mini tour where we walk around, we take the train, we get ourselves right into Old Town, and then we're going to do a speed build. So here we are. As you enter, you get this nice view. On your left is the train station. There's also some staff buildings there that are yet to be developed. They may get moved, they may get removed altogether. I'm not sure yet. And then in here, all of our exhibits have been moved now. So this is just an empty shell of a building that I may turn into a reptile house, or we may move the entire building to another area in the zoo as we develop things further. Obviously, all of the other stuff that we've kind of decorated in here is still there. It's just not really functional right now because people have no reason to come here. The information kiosk has been shut down because all of the vendors are working elsewhere, and we do have our train station, which is pretty much the only thing that's being used right now. Obviously, as you look over the fence here, there's still development to be done in making this area look aesthetically pleasing. We've not done any custom signage yet, but that's going to come as we add some habitats. We're just going to come through here and ride the train, so if everyone just moves out of my way, I'm important here so I can just jump the queue. We're just going to push past everyone. Excuse me, get out of my way, I've got a train to catch. And we will sit ourselves in a seat right here. So the train, obviously we need to develop this. I'd like the track to take a little bit more of a detour around and before it finally gets to the station in Old Town. We've got to get rid of all of this grass and things and just make it look a little bit more visually pleasing. Right now though, it's nothing to us. You know, it doesn't serve a purpose anyway, so we don't need to do anything with it. What we will be doing is a full development of Old Town as we go, but today I wanted to get a habitat in place. Now, as you can see, as we come into Old Town, we've put a load of shops in here. Got a little bit of a backlog at the station here, but we're just going to hop right off just about now, and I will tell you what you see as you walk through Old Town. So when you first come in, this is a staff building, and then there's some ATMs that obviously are just plonked down because the train station, the train tickets, should I say, are expensive. So they eat into a lot of finances, so I thought some ATMs right there would be a good idea so that people can withdraw some cash as they get into Old Town. We then have information kiosks, some toilets, then over here our quarantine, our vet surgery, and a research centre. These buildings haven't been fully developed yet, so they're all just the empty shells at the moment. Actually, if we go inside, you will see that there's just nothing in here. But that's how I want to keep it. I think I spent a lot of time learning to play this game and trying to create these elaborate interiors for buildings when actually you just need to have a nice looking building outside. Going over to this first bridge, you will see there's a couple of issues here where there's a lack of continuity with the buildings and how they like back onto the bridge itself. But that's something I can adjust and change as we move into fully developing this area. Through here, we have again, these signs will probably move or change or make some customized ones, but we have a mechanics hut, a workshop, sorry, a staff room, a transformer, research hut, trade centre, and a keeper hut. These we need to put the plaster on here. You can see the bare bones at the moment. Habitat over on our right, and we could put in a few other habitats on that little island. Moving over into here though, you have Old Town. Now, we have yet to decorate these buildings. They are just the shells, as I've already said, but we have a load of food and drink vendors, and we may actually pull some of these out and put in some merchandise shops so we can get some sales on them. But as we come around, you can see just there, we've just gone past another potential habitat, another toilet block, and the town is looking really good. We've got people coming here, and it's looking like a fun place to be. I'm excited that the idea of having that train station coming in and pulling in a lot of income, because that is now fully profitable. It pulls in about $5,000 or $6,000 a year, and it forces people into a new area of the zoo. So although we could have our tickets really low, the only option people to then have to actually see the zoo is to pay for train tickets, which is great. just a little bit of a con I'm running in this zoo. But as you can see, all of our exhibits are on this main street going in through Old Town. We do need to adjust the actual exhibit information boards a little bit so that they look a little bit nicer and aren't just plonked in there. This is the building that we finished on our last episode right at the end, and we have 2 habitats here. Now, I'm going to do a European fallow deer today, and we're going to probably pull in some Przewalski's horses, some llamas, and some badgers. I'll show you what I've currently got at the moment, and over here, another staff building with a staff room, a trade, not a trade centre, an animal keeper hut, and some toilets. And our train goes all the way along here, coming right along the end, so they should just get a little bit of a view of the animals that we have in these habitats. It won't be a great one, but it'll be something. And that completes our tour. We're just going to come back out, and then today I'm going to talk a little bit about our financials as well. So as you can see, we did have one refund, or like a family getting a refund because they were unhappy with a visit. This all kind of happened when I was moving stuff to and from, and it kind of got a little bit dicey for a little bit of time. But everything is looking good. You can see our ride running costs are about 3.5, but if we look at our income from ride tickets, it's around about, there we go, 5,500. So we're getting a £2,000 profit on the trains at the moment. And it took a little bit of tweaking to get the times right, but we finally got there in the end. Our zoo entrance tickets aren't pulling in a lot, and our shop income is starting to increase, which is really good. We could do with putting our prices up a little bit. That's something that I'd thought about, but right now I'm pretty happy with how things are, and it's actually key in keeping the guests happy as well. Because as you can see, we're only at like a 2.5, 2.75 rating, and the guests aren't. They're content, but they're not happy. And that is a fine line to be treading in terms of getting requests for refunds coming in. We don't have a lot of donations either, and that's probably because the exhibit animals we have in at the moment are like the same exhibit animals we've had for 30 plus years pretty much, so we could do with freshening things up a bit, which is another reason why I'd thought about putting a reptile centre right at the entrance to the zoo. But for now, we need some habitats in here. You can also see though that we've had some facility construction and scenery construction, which has eaten a little bit of the yearly budget, and we are sitting on around about a loss of 9 and a bit thousand. But we can start turning a profit with some habitats, bringing more people in, using those train stations, getting some donations in, and the sales of our exhibit animals. And if we do add a reptile centre, you can see here we're just looking at the red-kneed tarantula, which are taking quite a while to get up to that gold standard that I was hoping for. So maybe this one wasn't such a good purchase, but we're going to sell some of them anyway. Should bring in a nice little bit of profit and give us enough money to kickstart our growth by building our first habitat. So the other thing I want to mention, back to the reptile centre thing. If we do put a reptile centre in, that's going to be more animals to potentially sell for a profit. But as you can see, we're getting a load of gold standard stuff coming in, and that is bringing us a nice tidy profit every time we have a birth cycle. I'd also thought about, rather than having just the one breeding pair in, having 2. Now you can see me moving this mouse cursor around quite a lot, and that's because I'm explaining in my own head where I'm going to put this barn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy one of our buildings and move it right across, so that guests walk right through the middle of it, and on either side there's going to be a sleeping area for the 2 habitats that you see here, one at the bottom, one at the top. We are taking on the European fallow deer, and as you can see, I've got 2 males and a few females, and I'm going to be selling one of the males. I don't know why, I just feel like at the moment I want to try and just have them all in one place. But the main goal will actually be to have European fallow deer in both habitats that are breeding, and then we move them across to keep the generations of breeding going and raise the profile of those animals every time. Very much like I did with the Arctic fox in Northlands National Park. And we do the same with like Przewalski's horses or llamas as well. And it would just be this constant back and forth of animals swapping in between the 2 enclosures so we can continue expanding that breeding pool. Now, badgers will be a little bit of a different story, but we could have these 4 or 5 sets of animals in various different habitats and spread them across each different one that is part of Old Town. I don't think I'm going to have any other animals in Old Town apart from this group that I'm trying to get together right now, and every now and then I do just check out the trading marketplace so that I can try and build these up immediately. One of the things that has been a little bit frustrating is I didn't realize that, you know, when you put an animal into your zoo, it needs to be in a habitat for vets to research it. I can't just have them in the trade centre and then have that research going. Otherwise, I would have had these fallow deer fully researched, I think, by now, because I've had them for quite a while. But we're going to put our deers in, and then we are going to get on with our speed build for today, building out this habitat. So to begin with, I wanted to play around with the terrain a little bit, and we don't have a lot of space in this habitat to do anything really elaborate with the terrain height, but I wanted to create a nice little frame with some rocks here and then bring the terrain up on one side so that it creates a natural barrier at the top and like the apex of that hill, should I say. We went a little bit over the top on the intensity of the terrain movement, but we finally fixed that, smoothed it back down into place and made a nice natural barrier there using those rocks. I then thought about pulling it down on the other side and putting a little bit of water in there, but it never really worked out, and eventually we do put a pond in elsewhere in the habitat so that there's a nice natural watering hole for the animals, which again leads us to having to put in a water treatment plant, and that goes in the ancillary building nearby that we finished in the last episode. Coming in with a bit of terrain painting, I wanted to make a dirt track for our keepers, and then over here where our barn area is going to be, we put a load of dirt in there. Then throwing down some beech trees just at various rotations and in different places. I wanted to make sure that we had a nice consistency with the types of greenery we're using. So Old Town is going to predominantly feature temperate and European types of trees like cypress, holly, beech, and a few other bits and pieces. We don't want to go over the top on the variation. We want to try and keep this kind of natural looking by not having too many differentials in our foliage. So we're going to get a lot of bracken, a lot of nettles, and a lot of those normal leafy greens that you would see in these temperate areas, and making little scenes where our trees are, and then putting in a few like little blankets of the large kind of flowering items like the daisies, the peonies, and the little bits of wildflowers that we got with the conservation pack, as well as using the grass terrain brush, which does look really nice if you use it effectively. I think I overdid it a little bit in this, so we may need to reduce the footprint there at some point. The main reason why I'm not going over the top with the foliage and stuff in here, even though the deers can have up to like 100% coverage on foliage, I am still in the back of my mind thinking about having this as a mixed habitat. So we need to be aware of the fact that Kowalski's horse, llamas, they don't have as much wiggle room for the amount of foliage you can have in a habitat. That makes things difficult, and that's why I want to try and keep a low profile on this by just putting in a few scenes here and there that look nice and draw the eye in the habitat. And when you do zoom out, it looks a little bit flat and boring, but when you're right up at like a guest view, it looks really nice and really effective. This is where we put in our pond, and this took a little while to get the smoothing right on the terrain because it looked like too much of a sheer drop going in. Even when I did the terrain painting that I usually do, it wasn't good enough. So we smoothed it down little by little, kept putting the water back in and kept seeing how it went. I think I could push this a little bit more, but I was pretty happy with the overall feel of it, and I just left it as it was. We threw in some sand, then repainted some of those grass textures, and I think I was pretty happy with the end result here. The next thing was to put in a little bit more bushing and a few trees, and then move this rock work all the way around so that it had an ending where the pond is. This just kind of creates an extra dimension at the top of the pond and stops it looking like it's all this one flat texture. We then continued to lift up the earth around it, but I ran into a little bit of an issue where we actually get to the point where the water is, so we had to move and do a little bit more work with the rocks to make that sit nicer in the habitat itself. Pull around a few more rocks and just create a little bit of a level, and you've got something really nice by the end of it. I thought about putting a few trees in here, but then I settled with bracken and bramble bushes just to finish it all off and make it look like these bushes were just growing out from under these rocks. And you've got a really nice little bit of framework. We then put in a small beech sapling, and that's actually going to probably have a webcam on it as kind of like a little you know, where you have these animal hides and these trail cams that they get called quite often in America. And it was nice to have a few different areas. So we've got a trail cam that ends up getting put in right next to the pond, so they can, guests who are looking online and viewing these webcams can see the deer drinking from the pond there. And then you've got one in the tree where we end up having the feeder, and one by the barn where they go to sleep at night. Doing a lot of whizzing around here with the camera, but it's just while we're finishing off putting bits and pieces in. I put this fallen log in right at the base of that because I still thought that that needed something to really finish it off. And I thought about putting another log in there, and then ended up settling for a couple of broken branches and tree stumps where we actually hide another trail cam in the tree stump itself. This, I'm still not quite sure about this fallen tree. It looks a bit weird just sticking up at that strange angle, so I may go back and change that at a later date. But in general, this is starting to look really nice. The next thing to do was to make our barn. And at first, I'd grabbed the building that we'd already finished, which had the keeper hut and staff in it. And I didn't like the fact that I was doing that because it was already a completed building. So I took this shell from the toilet block and started putting that in place as well. Now, we need to make sure that it has an extra wall in it, so that there's enough space on either side of it to create a decent sized sleeping area for the animals that are going to be on either side of the habitat. Because this actually traverses two habitats, so we need to make sure there's enough sleeping space on either side for whichever animals are going to be using it, as well as enough room in the middle for guests to walk through. And as you can see, we still have fences in there, but we are going to modify those and remove them out so that the fences end up just ending at the walls of the building. I do a little bit of off-cam development here where I finish off these buildings and decorate them a little bit more appropriately. And for the purpose of this video though, I've only done the side where the European fallow deer are going to be. And that actually involved recolouring the plaster and putting a few different finishing touches in, which you will see in the showcase at the end of the video. But it was all just about making sure that everything matched up neatly and we had enough space in here to create what we were looking to make in terms of our general overall look of it. Now, we do take out the fences eventually and then put in a little bit more of a different barrier so that guests can actually look in and see these animals sleeping. But it looks really nice zoomed out, and we're just putting in some bedding here, just a nice coverage there. And then we'll put in a few finishing touches once we've adjusted the fence. This one took a while because I'd matched up this fence really nicely when I first built it, and I played around with a few different ideas for getting it to work, but nothing seemed to help it out. And eventually what then happened was we just moved everything in so that the fences ended as they touched the building and made a brand new custom barrier for the inside of the building itself. And here we are. We have a nice little talk point here, as well as our information boards, and people can actually feed the deer over this fence, which is really nice little touch. You can see the pile of food that's been there from the last talk that was done. Over at the pond, I threw in a few lilies, and as you can see in the background there, the barn has been recoloured with a different type of plaster that still remains earthy, and we've put in some windows and a couple of the alternative textures, and some cracked like stone coming through there where the plaster's faded away, a couple of hooks on the wall, some nice deer based flags and the deer lights, and that's our little fence for guests to just lean in and look at the habitat. Over here we have more work on the outside and more development to the colouring of the plaster itself, and it'll be a different colour in the other habitat just to add that variation in the buildings that we have here, with a few windows on the roof as well. Overlooking at this area, you can see in the background both of the buildings are there looking really nice and like fully fleshed out, contrasting with the buildings on the right. You can see where we've not actually done all of the work yet. But the deer have a lot of space, they're relatively happy. We actually managed to research a couple of enrichment items and they have now been put into place. The barrel feeder, which rests against this tree that's right at the front of the camera, that's not in this video yet. And where those nettles are, we have a little bit of a feeder. Now this is a webcam view, you can see our male and female deer there getting very cozy together, and there's a few other females in there for him to breed with as well. This is our second webcam right down next to the watering hole, where there's plenty of stuff you can see, including some of the nice facilities in the background like our Street Fox coffee. The bedding area, you can see we've got a deer asleep here, and the guests are walking through here nicely. They do kind of float a little bit when they come through, and some of them just run right on by. Why wouldn't you look at that deer right there? I don't know. This is the scent feeder and the scent marker in action. We've got one of the females here just checking it out right in amongst those nettles, which I think is really nice. It's nice to hide those sort of things in foliage and the train going past there. And this is our final look at the buildings that we've completed so far and our first habitat. So I hope you enjoyed this one. There was a little bit of talking, a little bit of management, and our first habitat is now up and running. There's a bit more we could do here, but I'm pretty happy with how it is so far. So thank you all for watching again, and I will see you next week when we build our second habitat, and I do a little bit more off cam to develop this zoo further. Bye bye.